Yeah. Hey, David, we're live now. I didn't realize this.
Yeah. Can you
um,
see
Hold
me
on.
okay, everybody?
Yeah, you're the one that's supposed to never have done this, but I'm the one that's supposed to be a pro. Here we go. Man, are we in trouble? Um, I thought that was an incredible piece you had uh, in your wonderful Substack on Social Security.
Thank you.
Um, Tell me, well, I can know what prompted you, but kind of give people who haven't read it an overview.
Sure. So I got to give credit. There are a lot of journalists that have done a really good job of covering not just the debate about the level of Social Security benefit or if it will exist, but also just the death by a thousand cuts attacks on Social Security. And I wrote a piece about 2 weeks ago about the Save Act. And the Save
Right?
Act is just this horrific attack on voter registration. I mean, just it absolutely obliterates most of the ways that most Americans, almost all Americans, register to vote. And the purpose, like a poll tax or like past voter suppression tactics, is to make it so hard, so expensive, so inconvenient, such long lines, and you name it, that people just don't register. That's clearly the point. And so, as I've been reading all these other journalists' accounts of what they are doing to Social Security, the administration of it, the layoffs, the shutting of offices, my point was it's the same thing. Like, think about it, as my title says, as Social Security suppression. The goal here, under the same false myth of fraud, if you add it up, is to basically make it nearly impossible for a whole lot of people to actually get Social Security, because they are told if you need to update the bank account or even register in the first place, we're not going to do telephonic services. Many will end up in person offices. At the same time, they're cutting in person offices, eliminating in person work. They don't let you show up a day of. It's a nightmare. And it's clearly the same. They don't want to admit. I mean, you see Donald Trump say it. They don't want to admit that their goal is to reduce Social Security payments. So they are doing it, just like they don't want to say, yeah, we really don't want all those people to vote. So they come up with a myth of fraud, and then they just make it as difficult as possible, knowing that millions of people may stop voting, or in this case, may stop accessing Social Security because they've just made it impossible. And especially with seniors in rural America, they're basically cutting them all out, and they know it.
Which is, ironically, sort of a MAGA base.
Yeah.
Um, you've worked a lot in politics. I've worked a lot in politics and campaigns more. What I don't understand here is, so I was looking at my home state of Mississippi. They're cutting three offices. Why is it that the congressman and two senators from Mississippi are not raising holy hell about this? Because I was a page in Washington, and I can remember people calling and complaining about their Social Security, and it was always sort of like a scramble to answer it. I mean, nobody ignored it. Nobody said, "Well, don't worry." How is this? How are Republicans think that they're going to tolerate this level of pain, or is it that they just don't think that there will be pain?
I think, again, in the near term, and my hope is that elections changes, although I don't count on it. I'm looking at the list now: Gadsden, Alabama; Texarkana, Arkansas; Melbourne, Florida; Hazard, Kentucky. These are where some of the offices are being
Yeah,
slated. Huma, Louisiana. There are three in Mississippi here.
Houma,
Um,
Louisiana.
yeah, and these things are going to be, as someone in Pennsylvania said, if they get no, I'm sorry, this was North Carolina. If they get rid of the one that this one person I quoted is from, he's got a 100-mile drive. I just think they are clearly so afraid of Trump and Musk primarying them, that remains their biggest fear. And this is a Doge project, so they would probably think, "Oh, we're going to make Musk mad at us." But I think my hope is, just like last night, we saw Trump plus 15 district flip to a Democrat. Next Tuesday, my hope is we win the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. But even more importantly, maybe for these people, the racists in these Florida districts are a lot closer than people expect. These are very pro-Republican areas, but the hope is, these are cowards. We know that, but we need to make them fear the mainstream American voter as opposed to the primary voter. In a gerrymandered district, that's not easy to do. But if we start to see election results where we see dramatic overperformance, even in Trump districts, maybe they will fear us. And maybe that's when they think, my God, people are really livid about. I mean, you know this, there's a Medicaid, Social Security. Those are the third rails. I mean, those are the third rails. That's why they don't want to admit that they're cutting it. They just want to make it so damn hard for people to do it that it just the accessibility drops like a rock. But my hope is that maybe some of these specials scare the hell out of them. And we only need a few House members to speak up. We know that it's such a narrow margin. But yeah, to this point, I mean, I watched John Husted, the new senator of Ohio, used to try and be a Republican. I had the same feeling you do about the cuts to NIH. These are
Yeah.
devastating to Ohio State, University of Cincinnati, Case Western, Toledo, just like in Alabama. The NIH cuts, it's hundreds of millions to some of the best institutions in these red states. For the life of me, I don't understand why Katie Britt or John Husted don't speak up for the institutions that probably drive a lot of the best jobs of these states, but they won't say a word.
And they're also at the core of their financial donor base. The University of Alabama has been a power center for Katie Britt because
Yeah,
her husband was a football player there. I think is involved with it now. There is a huge political operation at the University of Alabama that they call the Machine, which I've always kind of been fascinated by. And you would think that those trustees, the ones that are going to have to try to make up the funding. There's a lot of pride in not just, Roll Tide, but we've got great department of, a famous person teaching math, a great
yeah,
person teaching. And I just really, I find that uh, so inexplicable of how that they would allow this to happen without question. Now, over at the Lincoln Project, we're going to raise hell about it. And we're going to make ads and we're going to target these people and we're going to
yeah,
say, why have you, like Senator Roger Wicker, Senator Cindy Hyde Smith in Mississippi, why is it that you are supporting closing these offices?
yeah,
Because if they're not speaking out, they're supporting it, which
absolutely.
I think is good. Look, if you're just joining us, one of my favorite people on the planet, David Pepper here. If you're not subscribing to a Substack, how do you find it, David? It's
Mine is that David Pepper. I think, as I heard you saying when I was getting on, like I think it's technically called Pepperspectives, but I think if you look up David
Pepperspectives.
Pepper, you'll
Yeah.
find it. Thank you.
And you've got your whiteboards on there?
Yeah, I have whiteboards. One thing I've been trying to do is talk to experts who are kind of in the know. Like I did one on the NIH, and as you're hinting at, I think right now we know that the crazy thing with Hegseth and the signal room is huge, but back home politics, which is where I think we need to go to really get these. By the
Yeah.
way, whether it's that we scare them or that we beat them, one way or the other, we have to beat John Husted. And the way we do that is Social Security, which I think is third rail, Trump supporters, Medicaid, and I do think these university cuts. I mean, we're all running around right now cheering on these schools as they play basketball.
Right.
I went to the game in Lexington the other day with my kids. Tennessee people, Creighton people, they'd been driving for hours. They love their schools. So I think there's a dangerous politics these people are playing. They love the schools for sports, but Ohioans love Ohio State. And I think if the cuts come through and John Husted has never said a word about stopping cuts to the NIH funded cutting edge cancer treatments coming out of Ohio State, I think that's very dangerous ground with voters in the next year. So I think we need to really focus in the NIH stuff. I mean, this is big dollars, great jobs. medical research is one of the key advantages Ohio has. And my guess is when you go to University of Alabama or Georgia, they're going to say the same thing. We're amazing at this. We've cured cancers, or we've got cutting edge clinical trials happening right now. And I think that they should speak up. And if they don't, we must. Yeah, I agree, Corey. V Ohio State. Sorry about that. They If they're not speaking up, and they are not. I saw John Husted again. He's running for re-election already because he's up in 26. He had some meet and greet with Ohioans today, and he said, I met with some Ohioans a bit about biotech. Yeah, I bet I know what they were saying, John. They were telling you that you were about to get destroyed by these cuts, but
Yeah,
he didn't
I
say
mean,
that.
listen,
He,
this was particularly true in the South where I grew up, where you had these small states, poor states, and the power of the United States senators was in seniority. Their
yes,
power was because they could bring home the bacon. This is why you voted for them. This is
yes,
how you ended up with in outside of Biloxi, Mississippi, not previously known as the Intergalactic Tech Center. You have the Stennis Space Center because of John Stennis. He could go in there and fight for it. And that this is just going to be completely reversed now. I don't think it's going to work. I did a race in 2014 for Thad Cochran, who was uh, right. He'd been in Senate forever, been a congressman. I've been a page for him. He was right on the verge of becoming chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. And it was a real harbinger of what Trumpism was going to be, because there was a guy who was running against him in the Republican primary. I mean, just think about it. You're primarying a United States Senator guy who's never lost a Republican primary, never lost an election. And he was primarily funded by out of state efforts like Club for Growth.
right.
And they were going after Cochran on spending. As Haley Barbour referred to it, it was like an out of state hostile takeover attempt at Mississippi. And we ran right at it. We said, instead of trying to say yes, we ought to cut spending, we made ads saying, okay, here are earmarks that he's gotten. Here's a school, here's a new medical office that's been opened up, here's a road that's been built, here's a bridge.
Yeah,
And people, they like that stuff. They can touch it. Um, and I just think this is such an easy thing. You had Elon Musk referring to Social Security as a Ponzi scheme.
yeah,
And I don't know if you caught this, but this sort of cartoonish billionaire who's commerce secretary was saying in an interview, somebody, I have a mother-in-law, if she's on Social Security, if she misses a month, she's not even going to notice. The only people who are going to complain if it was on fraud. Now, let's just, stipulate, as you lawyers say, if you have a billionaire son-in-law, probably you're not living paycheck to paycheck on
right,
Social
right.
Security.
True.
But, most people didn't win that lottery.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
and,
it's amazing how, one thing I've been saying, sort of bigger picture, is Donald Trump basically, I hate to give him credit, but he convinced people before 16 and 1620 that he was the everyman's billionaire, that
right,
he was for everybody, and he convinced a lot of people that that's why he won. And he actually kind of pulled it off. He's a billionaire, but he's fighting for you. This time, he has completely blown that narrative.
yeah,
He had billionaires in the front row of the inauguration. He has billionaires like the Commerce Secretary throughout his cabinet.
13
Musk
of
is
them,
this
13
disaster
billionaires.
with a chainsaw. So the point is, if the last time it felt like, okay, he is a billionaire, but he's kind of our billionaire, and I think some people thought that, this time, from the moment those billionaires were in the front row to the moment Musk is holding up that chainsaw, I think a lot more Americans are saying, oh, this is the kind of billionaire we'd expect, the kind who doesn't support us. It's not the old Trumpy everyman billionaire. This is what a real billionaire, the kinds we don't trust with our lives, are doing. And so comments about Social Security, everything Elon Musk is doing, is sort of right on brand about why we've seen the polling, people don't want billionaires running their lives. Whether it's Vivek Ramaswamy or Elon Musk, they don't want it. and they see that very clearly in almost everything coming out of the administration is reemphasizing this terrible brand that a bunch of really rich people are insulting people, offending people, and throwing people under the bus. And that is a very different feel than the first term,
Yeah, yeah,
where I
it is.
think he was more disciplined and didn't have that sense that all these people who are the CEOs are running everything.
Well, look, as a veteran of Bush world, and I never worked in the government, which is, by the way, a sign of their good sense. They never let me in the government. They kept me in campaigns. But you remember after 2004, very tight election. If half the crowd at a home game of the Ohio State had gone the other way in Ohio,
Exactly.
um, Bush wouldn't have won,
Yep.
which I have to say one thing about us. We were always humble. We never thought that we had it figured out. But, he took that as a mandate and he came in and tried to some degree, privatize Social Security. It was
Yep.
it's an oversimplification to say he wanted to do that.
Right.
Um, and it was crushing for Bush's numbers.
Disaster.
And
Yes.
his numbers started at a lot higher place. There's an interesting phenomenon that makes sense when you think about it. Every modern president except for one was more popular 100 days into their first term than they were, or into their term than they were on election day. This makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. It's kind of an American thing. Okay, I didn't vote for the guy,
Yeah,
but I
but
want
give
to
a
give him
check.
a
Give a
chance.
yeah.
Let's see. Bush at this point, winning this incredibly tight race, was at almost 60% favorable.
Right.
Um, Biden was at 60% favorable. But Trump he's below the numbers that he got on election day.
Yeah.
And that's really sort of amazing because the hardest thing in life is to admit that you made a mistake, and the hardest thing to admit that you made a mistake is to admit that you made it recently,
Right.
and you say, okay, I voted for the guy, but I don't like him now. I really think that
True.
does
And
not bode well for him. Over at the Lincoln Project, we our goal is to put Elon Musk on the ballot. And the funny thing about that is there is an Elon Musk ballot every day, and it's called the stock market. And
right.
that's the price of Tesla. And
Right.
if the price of Tesla continues to collapse, this will be the end of Elon Musk in everyone's life. Because his entire wealth, the size of it is tied to Tesla. And
Mm-hmm.
Tesla is grossly inflated.
Yeah.
It has been talking this Ponzi scheme. His ability to talk up things that they were going to do in the future that has really driven it, which is none of those have ever proven to be true. Um, and his heart of their profitability are carbon credits, which is government money,
Right.
and the EV rebates.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a true statement that no individual in the history of the world has ever benefited so much personally from government expenditures than
Yeah.
Elon Musk. And it's weird, man. I see him out there with the chainsaw. He's not saying let's cut carbon credits.
Right.
Um, so we're going to be doing this, in this Wisconsin Senate race, Supreme Court race.
Good.
Elon Musk thought, well, I elected myself for president, getting myself a judge. That should be pretty easy. We could get that on the cheap.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think these are critical moments to show that they're not eh, absolutely uh, untouchable.
Yeah, no, I
They're,
agree. I'm glad people are doing the town halls. I'm glad I was at a protest in downtown Cincinnati the other day. Big crowd. The woman who organized it, they accuse folks of being paid. She had never organized an event before. She had barely been to a protest. She took it on herself. I show up there, hundreds of people. Like so, it's sort of a truly organic. I think that's really important,
yeah,
messaging wise, accountability wise. And I do think elections like the Wisconsin one and these specials, they're important to. One thing is people who are upset about this. I want them to see that they're not alone; they're in the majority.
yeah,
And one thing these elections do is make people think, okay, I'm not the crazy one. Pete Hegseth is, or Elon Musk is, and whether it's rallies or these specials, I think that helps people feel comfortable that when they think everything looks off, they're right, and that's especially true in areas that are maybe more traditionally conservative. That's why I like seeing these huge town hall meetings in red districts. I think
Yeah.
it does show people, oh yeah, I'm not alone here, even though I feel like I'm surrounded by Republicans. People seem pretty upset. I want to mention real quick on your Social Security point, and someone
Yeah.
mentioned this on the chat. You know, that blew up in Bush's face, and he wasn't even talking about it like they're talking about it now. He was
Yes,
saying
I know.
privatize, which threatened people. They're saying, they're calling it a Ponzi scheme, and they're destroying people's ability to even access it. I mean, if you're a senior in let alone if you don't have a phone or a computer, but if you're in a broadband desert, you're basically being told now, go get in your car if you even have one, drive dozens, 50, 100 miles. That's so much worse than anything Bush even said after he won that second term. So I think that what
And
Trump
it,
and Musk are doing is far worse.
yeah,
The rhetoric's
100% that.
terrible, and Bush never pursued it. They are shutting these offices now.
Yeah.
They are laying off, unless the court stops them, they are laying off thousands now. So people are going to feel it.
Yeah. If you
And,
go
and
to
if you can't
David's
access it,
piece,
you're cut off entirely.
yeah, if you go to David's piece, everybody, there's a link to what Social Security offices are being closed with a date.
Yes.
And when I looked at the ones in Mississippi, they're closing three of them. Uh, they were like, one was end of the month, the other was June 1st. I mean, this is not like we're going to have like a long runway for people to adjust. And,
Right.
the history of Social Security has always been to make it more user friendly.
Yes.
If you look at the Social Security statement you get now, it is very different than the kind of Social Security statement that existed 25 years ago, which is very confusing. It was like, I don't know, some sort of weird government document. They have consciously modeled it after financial statements you're getting from Schwab or your IRA to make it where this, okay, this should be transparent to people. This
Yeah.
is how much you have. This is how much you're getting. If you're having taken out for Medicare, this is what's being taken out. And I got to say, it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Um,
This is
and
exactly what's happening on voter registration. Like, too, we have
mhm.
made voter registration the last 30 years. We have online. We have nonprofits can do it, and that Save Act is trying to get rid of all of that and send us all literally to go to in-person offices that will be understaffed, overwhelmed, long lines. And so, just so folks, someone wrote on the chat, which I'm trying to keep up with. Hey, I'm still getting my deposit. You will. This will require if you change your bank account, or if new people sign up. So it's sort of a long game. Like, the Save Act doesn't deregister us, but it basically any new registrations, which are
Well,
millions of them, will now have to
and,
be done in person if they pass it. This is the equivalent for Social Security.
yeah,
And so the long game is they know that this will impact a lot of people, and they know it will disproportionately impact people who don't have transportation, in this case rural, poor folks who don't have a computer. It's going to really it'll be bad for everybody, and the numbers will be big, but it'll certainly disproportionately impact, I think, the people that they have even less empathy for, and they know it.
yeah, if you remember, Social Security isn't just about seniors.
Right.
It's about helping people, kids
With
who's say, you're now suddenly living in a single mom household.
Yes.
Social Security is designed to help you keep out of poverty, and it is the greatest anti-poverty program in the history of America. It has been a wild success, and that's when stuff you think about it. A parent is on Social Security, they die. It's up to the kids now to get Social Security. That's when you want to pick up the phone and talk to somebody how to do this and
Yes.
what's happening here. Because it's not going to be your bank account. It's going to be your parent who's now deceased. How do you get it switched to your account? Um, I used to remember when they closed some offices in COVID, it was very problematic for a lot of people. And those were temporary closures. And they didn't
Yeah.
cut back on the phone access, they increased the phone access. So,
And we, as well as I do, like I'm getting, I hate to admit this, I lost my car keys the other day. So I've got to go to the Ford place and get my keys. And it gives me the option to go online. I want to call. I don't want to get caught on some online service, and that's just getting my like my key fob back, let alone this stuff. But like the minute you get sent online, yeah, sometimes it can be easy. Like I do some things online, but when I have something I'm really worried about, I want to talk to somebody. And the idea that that's what they're cutting out, especially if someone's not as computer savvy, that it's the telephonic service that's gone, is I think for
Yeah.
some lives going to really throw them out of whack.
Yeah. And, the standard joke was how bad DMVs are run across the country. You want to go into a DMV office. Well, DMVs have actually gotten more user friendly,
Right.
and you can make appointments and you can do this. And this is like a complete reversal of the trend that has existed is to make government more
Yeah.
accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, we're paying for it. We're the
Yeah.
customers. These people work for us.
And like the voting rights space, when they do this, it's because they don't want people using it and they
Yeah,
don't want people access. When they
yeah,
make Medicaid harder, it's because they know that that will lead to tens of thousands of people who no longer get it. Not because they're not eligible, but because they can't get through the hoops.
yeah.
And voter registration, it's to make it hard enough, like a poll tax, you just can't do it. And what they're doing here is creating multiple obstacles. And for certain people, they will run into every one of those obstacles. If you're a rural senior, you may not have the internet, and now they may be shutting down. So these compound. And so
And
when
add
they make
language.
government harder intentionally, it's because
Add,
they want people falling off the rolls.
yeah.
It's
All
very
right. Well,
clear.
look, we could go on about this. I just want to thank everybody for joining us. There's often this sort of sense, what can we do? There's no silver bullet. That's something I learned in campaigns. You always sit there, what's the perfect spot? There is no perfect spot. You have to just complete an argument. And every person here has an ability to take a stand.
Yeah.
Subscribe to David Substack. Subscribe to Lincoln Square.
Yeah.
Support the Lincoln Project. Uh, you know, there are a lot of billionaires in the Trump world right now, 13 of them. There aren't any billionaires out there calling up David and us and saying, hey, look, guys,
Right.
we want to subsidize what you're doing out there
Yeah.
attacking the government. We're only here because and able to get here and reach more people and ask friends. I mean, every week, if you ask 5 friends to join David Substack or Lincoln Square Substack, that's that adds up very fast. I mean, that's the compound interest of individual voter participation.
Yeah. And by the way,
So,
one quick thing on that. And
yeah,
by the way, a bunch of people are subscribing to me now thanks to this chat. Thank you to all the newcomers. On today's newsletter, at the bottom, I have a sort of sample email or
right,
Facebook post that you should send to your friends who are seniors, particularly if they live in Republican districts or they've Republican U.S. senators. Get them because you mentioned it. This is an issue that will lead to a lot of phone calls that may scare people. So I put sort of a sample text or message you can send to your friends who are seniors or care about this to get them to call their members of Congress or call their senators. I
perfect.
think people are more likely to call on this than just about any other issue.
Yeah, you shut down those phones. I've been in those offices. It is not a happy moment.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much, David. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Take
We'll
care.
do
Keep
this
your
again
commute.
soon.
See you soon.
And stay angry, stay fighting. All the best.
Take care.